As we think about monarchy today, it's a very nuanced picture that we tend to come up with because kings and queens these days mostly function a bit like mascots for their country. They're not really the most powerful people in the picture. They have a ceremonial function, they reassure the people about their identity. That's mainly what kings and queens are about in our culture today. But in Jesus' day, monarchy was not a token thing. There was really unfettered power vested in the kings and the queens of his day. And Pontius Pilate, being a Roman governor, was probably more attuned to the idea of the emperor, but he got the point. He wanted to know whether Jesus saw himself as a king, because if he did, that meant political tension, power struggle, that kind of thing. So Pontius Pilate asked some questions, and it's interesting about information these days because once upon a time it seemed like information was power, didn't it? Do you remember the days when the word was information is power and it gives you the power? I'm not sure we still live in that age. Information today seems to be confusion or inundation or exhaustion or just, whatever. And we live in a time when we are so inundated with information. The task is trying to work out which information to pay attention to and which isn't worth paying attention to. And it's really interesting to see Pilate here. Is he just gathering some more information, or is this something that he's personally engaged with when he asks Jesus about his identity? And Jesus asks him a really interesting question. When Pilate says, are you a king? Jesus says, is that your question, or have you just heard other people asking that question and you're picking up their question? Are you just parroting what you've heard other people say? And Jesus seems to be checking in, do you have a genuine interest here? Do you actually care about whether I'm a king and what sort of king I am? Or are you just doing the talk of the community at the time? And it's interesting to think about how much of what we're interested in is generated by our genuine desire for engagement in that thing, or whether it's just being up to date with what people are talking about at the moment. I mean, do you care who won the Victorian election? Do you know? Yeah, I know. But I'm not personally invested in it, so yeah. Pilate is repulsed by the question. He says, what, you think I'm a Jew? Do you think I care about whether you're a king or not? No way. Get out of it. I'm not one of you. And this sets up one of the paradoxical things about inquiry about Jesus. Because if your inquiry about Jesus is not sincere, you're probably not going to find the truth. Really, only those who want to know for themselves, who want to gather this not just as another bit of information, but really are searching something out that's important to them, those are the people that are going to discover who Jesus really is. There's a little thing at the end of the first Harry Potter book. If you're a fan of Harry Potter, maybe some of you think I shouldn't be reading such things, but I love them. And at the end of the first story, they're hiding this thing called the Philosopher's Stone, and one of the head wizards, who's really clever, hides it in a special mirror which you look at and you can see what you desire, but the stone will only appear if you desire to use the stone appropriately, not for your own interests. And so it's the way in which you approach with the desire in your heart which reveals the thing. And there's a sense in which I get that's what Jesus is saying here too. If you're just looking for another bit of information to, work out where the family tree is of power or how to position yourself for whatever reason, you will never really understand the nature of Jesus as king. But if you're looking for someone to bow down to and worship because they are so worthy of that position, then you might actually glimpse the true nature of Jesus. See, many don't understand the power structures of the kingdom because we're more attuned to this kind of power structure. Power that is exercised over people, and whether you interact with that power in one of its incredibly multi-faced forms, like bullying in the school playground is a form of this power, where somebody has a power base in the school playground and exerts power over other children. That's a form of this hierarchical power. In one sense, the authorised force of the police is this kind of power too. You know, they carry guns, authorised guns. And so they have power over us in certain situations, and we're glad of that. Like, we're okay with it because we've given them that power. But we're not all equal at that moment. They have power over us at certain times. The legislative power of governments, again, something we approve of and we want because it gives order to our society. But when the government legislates something, we don't just go, yeah, I think I'll obey that. No, maybe not. No, they've got power, and we are obliged to submit to it. Or the judicial power of the courts. Again, you don't get to decide whether you think the judge is right or wrong. His decision is final, unless you've got a higher court of appeal, and then their decision is final. This is power over. We are not given the option to obey or not obey. We either obey or we face a coercive power that comes to make us conform to those rulings and judgments and directives. But Jesus has a different kind of power. It's not power over. Jesus comes to empower, to give us power in a sense. Not to empower us to do just any old thing, whatever we like, but power to live an eternal life. He empowers us to serve in the way that he serves. He empowers us to follow in his ways. Jesus wants to set people free from anything that hinders us from loving as he loves or serving as he serves. He wants to equip and strengthen people to be as he has been to people and is to people. The other day I put up the nativity banners. One's already been pinched, sadly, but the other one is still there. And I thought I could do it by myself. I kind of did it by myself last year with a bit of wrangling. And I had the banner and the ladder, and I was trying to put the ladder up against a tree and surveying the scene, and this man came up and said, that looks like a job for two people. And I went, yeah, it could be right. And he said, can I give you a hand? I went, well, if you want to. And he said, well, actually, I work in displays. I don't want to take over or anything, but if you'd like to assist me, I really know what I'm doing. I could tie it up. I know how to do that sort of stuff. And I found myself giving him everything and holding the ladder, and up he went and did a great job. It's the best banner hanging I've seen in my career. And he came down, and I thanked him so much and got his name, and he said, anytime you're hanging banners, give me a yell. Gave me his number. Wow, thank you. And I walked away from that, and I thought I didn't coerce him. I didn't manipulate him into doing that. He wanted to participate, and I sent him a message and I said to him, Rory, at that moment you were the gift of God to me. Thank you. And he said, it's easy to help people who are doing good things. That was his response. And this desire of participating in something good, he was empowered to just participate in something good and to add value, to make it better. And I think that's something of the power that Jesus has. He empowers us to enter in and do something good that makes the world a better place. This is the dynamic of Jesus' kingly power. He does not want to manipulate, coerce, control, those sorts of things. He wants to reveal a quality of life and then empower us to live that quality of life. And it's in an entirely different realm to how we mostly understand kingdoms. Kingdoms traditionally have territorial realm, like they'll be bordered by that stream or that forest or a mountain range over here or the coastline over there, and we know the territories. Even church organisations have territories. You know, we're in Sydney Presbytery, and there's authority structures related to that, and it's geographical, and in certain places you'd be in a different presbytery, but we're in this presbytery. But the realm of Jesus' kingdom is not geographical in that sense. It's not of this world in the sense that Jesus' realm, his kingdom, is found in the willing desires of people's hearts. Wherever people willingly desire to have him as their king, that is his realm. It's all over the place in that sense, and not everywhere at the same time, but wherever people give themselves to the jurisdiction of this king, that is Jesus' kingdom. And then we get this little bit at the end of this story where Jesus interacts with Pilate about the nature of truth. And it's fascinating to see Pilate as he sits up there and pontificates. We didn't hear the last little bit where Pilate says, but what is truth? And that's, we'll talk about that in a sec. But Pilate's up there, and it's funny because even a person who's not really particularly interested in truth ends up testifying to the truth and saying, so you are a king. And in that, it's recorded there that Pilate identifies Jesus certainly as self-identifying as a king. And it's really interesting. Truth is a powerful thing that whether you're interested in it or not, or even if you're actively wanting to suppress it or not, it still has this power to come out. One of the fascinating aspects of the recent Me Too movement in our history, where all these historical accusations are starting to come out. And at one level you kind of think, but that was 10, 20, 30 years ago, or indeed the Royal Commission into terrible things that happen in institutions and so forth, stuff that happened a generation or 2 generations ago. And yet this truth, it doesn't dissipate, it doesn't disappear, it's still active, and then it comes and haunts, as it were. Its power is felt. Truth has that aspect to it. You can't extinguish truth. It's always alive, it's always there. Even if you bury it, it cries out from the soil. That's part of the nature of truth. And even if you've got really good skills and make a lot of effort at suppressing truth, it's a losing battle, because as soon as you stop making that effort, it emerges once again. Pilate chooses which side of history he wants to be identified with. He says, I'm not one of you people. I'm a Roman. I'm with the power. And yet the truth over a period of time shows us the wisdom of his decision. Which story has prevailed? The Roman story or the Christ story? And Jesus, the truth of Jesus is his purpose and destiny was always to rule. And albeit it's not the power over kind of rule, there is this sovereignty to it. Even though Jesus' life and ministry was shaped by acts of humble service, make no mistake, his purpose and destiny, just like the purpose of destiny of truth is to be known, the purpose and destiny of Christ is to rule. The way of Jesus is the eternal way of life. There is no other eternal way to live into eternity. And so it just stands the test of time. And I'm not here referring to Christianity or any other kind of inanity. I'm not talking about religiousness. I'm talking about the way of Jesus, that self-giving, loving, giving into the world kind of investment way, the way of truth, the way of mercy, the way of justice, the way of forgiveness, the way of kindness, those sorts of things. They are eternal. They will rule the day. I love this cartoon. It tells us so much about us and our culture at this time, I reckon. Whether you happen to be a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu or Buddhist or a New Age or an atheist or an I don't care or I'm just thinking about it, if you are genuinely open to truth, you will recognise the truth of the way of Jesus. And you hear this in the street. People will say, I'm not very interested in Christianity, but that Jesus guy, It'd be nice if people were more like him. We recognise it. We know it to be true. There are times when this truth is confronting. It calls us to change our ways. And it bids us to follow a path that is not equivalent to the path of least resistance. But anyone who recognises the truth knows that the ultimate path of least resistance means not resisting the truth. And when we submit to the true King, we never need to fear the truth again. We are free to know and free to be known. And I put it to you that that is the greatest and richest freedom of all. Pilate was a very wily politician. He knew that when he couldn't win the argument, you changed the parameters of the conversation, and so when he couldn't engage with truth, he very cleverly made truth kind of unknowable. What is truth? How do we know? Don't follow Pilate's example. Don't miss out, as it appears that he did. Honour Jesus as the King that he really is. A king unlike any other. Not a king who wants to rule over you, but a king that wants to empower you to enter into the richest, fullest, truest life. And as we gather around this table in a moment, we gather around one who gave himself for us, and he invites us to follow him in that way, for he is our King. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you that you didn't want to exert forceful power over us, but in all your ways you humbly serve us and lift us up. But that doesn't make you less of a king. That makes you the one true King, the one that our hearts delight to follow, not out of fear, not out of guilt, not out of whatever you might do to us if we don't, but because it's the good way to go. Lord, lift us up to be your people and to follow in your ways to the glory of your name. Amen.